After the selection of Tim Walz as vice president, Republicans tried a variety, I think, of different attacks. The one, though, that is beginning to stick is claims of quote-unquote stolen valor. So we are going to go through everything that we know today. It was kicked off by the vice presidential candidate for the Republicans, Senator J.D. Vance. Here's what he had to say.
What really bothers me about Tim Walz as a Marine who served his country in uniform, when the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful to prepare your unit to go to Iraq, to make a promise that you're going to follow through, and then to drop out.
Okay, so let's go all the way back in time to 2005. Krystal, you can weigh in here if you would like. So the timeline is such. Tim Walz is a 24-year veteran of the Minnesota National Guard. He rises to the level of Master Sergeant and then is, I believe, I don't exactly understand how the term works, but he was then quasi-promoted to Command Sergeant Major. It's one of the highest enlisted ranks in the United States military. In 2005, that is the tail end of his career. At that exact moment, whenever he files to run for Congress some 4 months before the deployment order comes down, there is a decision that he has to make on whether he is going to go to Iraq with the Minnesota National Guard unit that he is attached to as a senior enlisted officer for the artillery unit or not. He decides not to go and to retire. Now, there's questions here around the retirement date. So if we look at, there's two separate factors. The defense of Tim Walz is that Walz did not know that his unit was going to go to Iraq. So the retirement came 2 months before the official order. The detractors say that the senior enlisted personnel and some people who served in that unit said that they knew for months before the official order came down. I spoke to some people in the military. They said, yeah, it's actually quite common before an official order comes down or not. So I would say it's somewhat believable. That is, I would say, the first of with these quote-unquote attacks. They didn't go to Iraq whenever he helped prepare the unit for it. Do you want to weigh in before I get to any of the others?
I mean, the specific details, Minnesota National Guard said the unit got the alert for mobilization in July. He had retired 2 months earlier in May and had been planning a congressional run. So there you go.
All right, so that's the timeline. The second one comes back to this clip, where he had claimed that he had carried weapons in war while discussing gun control. So this was a quote from a video that was posted actually by the Kamala Harris campaign. This was the quote then that people are seizing on. Let's take a listen.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
All right, so that last part is becoming what's significant here for the attack. Let's put this up there on the screen. The reason why is that he claimed he, quote, carried weapons in war. Let's put NBC News up on the screen here. Asked about the video, a Harris campaign spokesperson did not deny Walz had embellished when he spoke of carrying weapons in war. They said in his 24 years of service, the governor carried, fired, and trained others to use weapons of war innumerable times. Governor Walz would never insult or undermine any American service to his country. In fact, he thanked Senator Vance for putting his life on the line. It's the American way. So this has now become one of the, I guess, the attacks here, and it kind of stems not necessarily from this one quote, but whether there's been a pattern here of claiming service that was not that did not actually happen. So, for example, let's put this please up on the screen. This is from a 2004 interview, or sorry, 2006 interview that Walz did with Bloomberg News. So basically, there's a question here of whether he claimed to Bloomberg News' Joshua Green, some may know him, he wrote a book about Steve Bannon in 2016, on whether he deployed to Iraq. So he wrote, Joshua Green at the time, a 24-year veteran of the Army National Guard, recently returned from serving in Iraq as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. Now, this is Jeffrey Ingersoll, actually my former boss over the Daily Caller. As he points out, Operation Enduring Freedom was actually about Afghanistan, but the claim here as to whether he claimed he served in Iraq or not. Bloomberg actually came out and stealth edited it, saying Italy in this. Joshua Green has not clarified whether he was told by Tim Walz that it had happened or not. If we go to the next part, this is the next part of the controversy, which is that the National Guard has had to come out and, I mean, they say dispute here. I would just say clarify. So Walz ran as a retired command sergeant major. Now, apparently, he actually fully retired as a master sergeant because according to the National Guard, he did not officially reach the rank, this is what I was talking about previously, of command sergeant major, although he did use it in campaign materials. Go ahead.
He reached the rank. He didn't complete additional coursework.
That's right.
So you didn't check the additional course.
I know this all sounds tedious. So. I'm going through everything just so everybody has it because the amount of misinformation and non-information that is out there, I want everybody to know the truth. Army people, please fact check me if I get anything wrong. The ranks and all this are very tedious. I apologize. Now, as I understand, the retire, claiming thing, that's a little bit of a problem because whatever, it's your DD-214, whatever your paperwork that you receive upon discharge. He was discharged officially, I believe, retired as a master sergeant despite running later. Now, why does any of this matter? Because politically, this is probably the attack that I have seen more embraced by Republicans and operatives, and it is one very familiar to the head of the Trump campaign. Let's put this up here on the screen. Krystal and Saagar, who was actually one of the people who helped orchestrate the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth campaign back in 2004, is literally the campaign manager for Donald Trump. And so that obviously was an effort to trying to bring up questions about John Kerry's service in Vietnam from people who had served with him in the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth media campaign that really was a big deal in 2004. And the real reason too is, and this is part I actually want to talk about with you, is how effective this is going to be. To say this is another Swift boat, I don't think it's true. I do think he definitely embellished his military service. And the weapons of war thing is straight up bullshit. The issue, I think, for the Trump campaign, 2004 was a security election. That was the Iraq election. That was the military election. Where are we going to surge? We're not going to surge. Who's going to handle? So that's why it was extremely relevant. Here, the issue I find only here is that I think it helps the idea for Republicans to run phony. Phony was the term that we saw stuck, incompetent and others, doesn't believe in anything, in our word clouds against Kamala Harris. If they could try and attach that label for Tim Walz and for Kamala, it will be a net benefit or not. And so it's not going to be as helpful as Swift Boat was, I think, in 2004 for the George W. Bush campaign. That's kind of where I fall on it. Although I do think, I mean, listen, you should do an interview and you should tell the truth about what happened here.
I think it's a better attack than Tampon Tim. I think we're reaching closer to something that will. I mean, listen, I could tell you, go through each of these and tell you, like, I think this is pretty flimsy. The Iraq thing doesn't really hold up in terms of the timeline. The Operation Enduring Freedom thing, all right, he served in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. They have one press release where he says something about that and him holding up a sign at an anti-war protest.
We've got that next if we want to put that up there. No, but Krystal, that one's legit.
The one.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
You can't claim you're a veteran if you didn't fight in the war. He literally said he was a veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom.
When I've seen, one of the clips that's circulating as like, oh, we got him. He said Operation Enduring Freedom. He goes on to explain, I served in Italy in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, and here's what that means. So listen, but putting all of that aside, ask yourself this question. Is anyone going to not vote for Donald Trump because of the whole Bone Spurs situation? No. Why? Because number one, like you said, it's not a security election. Number two, most importantly, he's just the type of politician who can get away with stuff like this. And I think Tim Walz, in contrast to John Kerry, who was a terrible politician and also who really leaned very heavily on his whole war hero thing in a way that Tim Walz, he talks about his service, but he identifies himself more, and Kamala's calling him, Coach Walz. Like, that's the persona he's leaning more into. But we also know, because these attacks against him came out during his gubernatorial campaign as well, he's the type of politician who can get through something like this because we've seen him do it in the past. So that would be the biggest thing I would say is just like, some politicians, they really struggle when they're faced with any sort of attack or question about it, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that this will end up landing or significantly harming the appearance of Walz. I think because he does come off as just like, the guy that he is, I think it's hard to put that label of phony onto him. So that would be sort of my, political assessment, putting the merits of the claims.
Well, put the last one up there, because I actually find that the worst one. Put that up there, please, on the screen. Well, actually, so we should have put the article, but basically, he held up a sign where he said he was a veteran, and he ran as a veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom. I wasn't even in the military, even I know that's bullshit. So that's actually what I would say I find the most egregious. Now, can he apologize and can he get his way out of it? Yeah, I think so. And generally, I mean, this is kind of what I used to say about the JD stuff as well, whenever I was worried about it. The bottom of the ticket attacks will work only to a certain extent. The top of the ticket is ultimately what matters. And yeah, Trump has himself no favors whenever he's basically got himself out of Vietnam. Now, in terms of politically, like what the overall effect of this has been, it is the only time I've seen the media begin to pick up on some of it. Now, partially it's because it has the most teeth in terms of the attack, but I believe the way that the Trump campaign and others appear to be looking at it is they feel like this is a way that they could try to change the conversation. Not necessarily about the Tim Walz thing in general, but to try and get the media to, quote, ask questions of Walz, but what they want is for them to ask questions to Kamala about this. And they want Kamala to have to be compelled to come out and to ask questions, not just about this, but to be asked questions in general. So like that's kind of how they are thinking about it.
This is Krystal and Saagar. This is what he did successfully with John Kerry's. He turned a strength into a weakness.
Yes.
And that's,
right.
They want to recapture that 2004 Swift boat magic. And something that is a strength for Tim Walz is that he has this career based on service, whether it's serving in the military or being a high school teacher, which, trust me, is a form of service. I come from a family of teachers, or, being the winning football coach, like service, and they want to turn that into a negative, and so that's why they're really, honing in on this and doing everything they can possibly with
exactly. it. The final part, it's so funny. This is just so classic Trump. One of the emerging attacks on Walz was his handling of BLM. Well, it turns out, though, Tim Walz has been sitting on this audio for, 4 years and leaked audio of Trump actually praising Tim Walz for his handling of the BLM protests. Let's take a listen.
Governor Walz is on the phone, and we spoke, and I fully agree with the way he handled it the last couple of days. I asked him to do that, and the whole world was laughing. 3 days later, I spoke to the governor. The governor's, I think, on the call, and he's an excellent guy. You've got a big National Guard out there that's ready to come in and fight like hell. I tell you, what they did in Minneapolis was incredible. They went in and dominated. And it happened immediately. Tim is on the phone now, Tim Walz. Again, I was very happy with the last couple of days, Tim. You called up big numbers, and the big numbers knocked them out so fast, it was like bowling pins.
Yeah, so that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough for the Trump people.
Yeah.
It's funny, I actually saw a lot of Ron DeSantis boosters who were like, yeah, this is the issue with Trump. They're like, anytime he's on the phone with, and he could be on the phone with like his arch nemesis. He'd be like, you're tremendous, you're an amazing person, and we love her. But, and then he would continue later. So yeah, that is as Trump as it gets. Can't attack him if Trump is a literal opponent said that he was doing a good job on the phone at the time.
Yeah, that makes it difficult. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I don't think that anything that happened in the COVID era is going, like whether people didn't like the decisions in COVID, didn't like, what happened during BLM, I just think people are moving forward.
Oh, I totally.
And this was the problem with the DeSantis campaign was that was the COVID stuff was really central to his political status within the Republican Party. And, he wanted to lean into that and actually moved away from it pretty quickly because people just were like, all right, that's in the past. I don't really want to think about it or talk about it anymore. So even if you didn't have Trump on the phone literally being like, you've done an incredible job, it was amazing, you came in so fast and so whatever he said. Even if you didn't have that, I don't know that really sticks to Walz. I think it will be difficult, I think, to label Walz as far left just because of his identity and the way, older white dudes just code as sort of moderate in America. I think that'll be difficult. I think the flip-flop charge that you can definitely level at Kamala Harris. I think that is going to be difficult. So if I were them, I would just train their fire on Kamala Harris. I think she's more easily dinged up on, you're a phony, you're incompetent. That was the big word that jumped out of our word clouds. Like, that's probably where the best juice is, even more so than the like far left, liberal, et cetera, et cetera. I think the more accurate thing, which is usually the one that lands and has the most teeth, is you just don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't. This woman doesn't know where she is. You don't know where she is. You don't know what she's going to be one day to the next. I think that's probably the most effective political attack that they could go with.
I totally agree with you. Incompetent is the best. I was going to say, this is another thing I find, is anyone I find still complaining about something from 2020, and I do this for a living, and I probably complain and remember much better than most. Even I'm like, this just doesn't hit. And I'll tell you, I think the reason why, this country has a tremendous capacity for amnesia. Yeah. Joe Biden was our presidential candidate and is our president a month ago, 1 month ago. Ask anybody in your life if they even think about Joe Biden now anymore. They don't. They don't think about him. Donald Trump was almost assassinated. He came millimeters away from getting his head split open on national television. Both he and everybody else has completely moved on from that. That was, again, not even a month ago. And so he's like, you're talking to me about 4 years ago? I'm like, a lot of analysis has actually been done. If you look at people's political attitudes after pandemics, just because it happened 100 years ago, by 2 years after the 1918, people were like, what? Who? Flu? What? What are you talking about?
Wow.
They don't even think about it. And way more people died, percentage-ways, at that time. There's an incredible capacity for amnesia within humanity, and especially in our modern media environment. Anybody's relitigating something from 4 years ago. I mean, even somebody who tells me, like, remember when this, if they're trying to run on something Kamala said in 2016, I'm like, guys, like, it's just so long ago. I mean, the only reason the Kamala flip-flop is relevant today is because she basically had no policy position, and it was the default up until now, and then now she's changing what she did. So I think that's relevant, and that's correct today. But if you're trying to say something that she said 2012 or whatever, I'm like, that's rough, man. I just don't think it sticks, both in the media environment today, and it doesn't hit home for what Americans want. Americans want change, they want something new, and they want to move forward. And we are doing that. That in general just captures some of the most successful campaigns that we've ever seen. Obama, change. I mean, just the word change became synonymous with this campaign. It's probably the most brilliant political moves ever, because it doesn't mean anything, but it also means everything. Yeah. And that's what you want.
Yeah, that's exactly. And that's what the Harris people are clearly trying to seize on. And, the fact that she looks, feels, sounds different gives her a real leg up in that competition. And so, I mean, you can see Republicans are struggling to figure out where they want to be, how they want to approach this, coming up with a consistent message. And, for people who are hopeful about the Harris Walz ticket, like, they are going to find some things that are going to work, right? They are going to have some ads up and come up with some lines of attack that are going to have some teeth, that are going to be more effective than, let's say, Tampon Tim. But I think they're still going through that process of workshopping things on the fly and seeing what might actually stick.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.